Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Suikoden. Now that we're near the end of the game, this is going to be a little bit of a bonus episode where I finally have all the 108 Stars of Destiny, so I'm going to talk a lot about them and their relationship to the characters in the novel Suikoden. I'm also going to talk a lot about the creation of the game and why it is the way it is, which is sort of an interesting mashup of the classical and the more modern anime style of game or storytelling. So first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the actual characters, and in order to do this, I need to speak a little bit about the novel Suikoden. The novel Suikoden is I mentioned this several times, but it's a very ancient Chinese novel about criminals who gather in righteous anger and indignation against the Chinese government during the Song dynasty. So it was written in like the 15th or 16th century, and it takes place in like the 12th century. So that's really important to remember. Now, a lot of people who play this game, I bet, don't really understand why certain characters are placed where they are on this list here. Like, for example, Kwanda, right? Why is he the Tenmo star? Or whereas Victor is the Tenko star. Why is Victor placed lower on the list than somebody like Kwanda, who is clearly not as important? Why is Humphrey so high up? The reason for this is because they roughly correspond, and when I say roughly, I mean roughly. Largely, most of them don't respond very closely to the characters in the book. However, they do somewhat. And this becomes less and less true as the Suikoden games go on, so by Suikoden 3, it's almost been completely thrown out the window. However, in this game and the following game, Suikoden 2, they try to keep it somewhat accurate. So for instance, I mentioned this a couple times, but Luke, who is the 4th star, you might wonder, well, why is he the 4th star? Well, the reason is because in the book, the Tenkai star here, I don't know why it's the same exact star, it should be the Tenkan star for Luke, is the character named Gongsun Sheng in the novel. And of course my Chinese pronunciation is not the greatest, so forgive me, but he is essentially a mystic, much like Luke. And since Luke is sort of our main mystic in the game, he is the Tenkan star. I don't know why this is so wrong here. Anyway, so a lot of the characters in the novel sort of match up a little bit with these characters. So, for example, Humphrey is this guy named Guan Sheng. Qasim Hazil is Lin Chong, and Lin Chong is known as the greatest swordsman in the novel. So Qasim, who is the greatest swordsman in the Empire, gets that role. It's a little more obvious with characters like Victor, and maybe even Gremio, guys like Cleo, Pan, etc., who are matched up with characters in the novel who are generally seen as being impetuous in Victor's case, very powerful, strong, and Cleo and Pan, who are kind of characters that are always seen together in the books. Often they are thought of as similar characters by anyone who reads the book. So, for example, Cleo and Pan are represented in the novel by these two characters who are basically constables, who are they're not servants of the main character by any means, but they are rather important characters whom you see often who are kind of on the side of the heroes, even though they're law people. So they have kind of a similar role in this, where they're always together, they're always doing things together, stuff like that. And a lot of the characters who are naval-based, for example, Taiho, are represented in the novels by characters who are also naval-based. So Sonia is another one. There's an important character in the novel named Li Gui, who is the chief naval officer of the 108 Stars of Destiny, represented here by Sonia, who in this game was the chief naval officer of the Empire before joining us. So you can see a lot of little things like that, and that's why characters like Fusulu, who really, you might be like, why is he a Tensatsu star? Why is he higher on the list than somebody like, I don't know, Jian or Loikan and Futch, these guys who are characters who are clearly more important to the story of Suikoden the game than Fusulu. However, the reason is because Fusulu is matched up. I mentioned this, I think, a little bit, very briefly, in an earlier episode, but Fusulu is heavily based on a character named Li Kui. Li Kui, I'm very bad at pronouncing this, but he is one of the most memorable characters in the book, and I'm actually kind of upset that he never has a major role, or there's no character quite like him in the Suikoden games. As you can see, Fusulu is this giant dude who wears no shirt and uses double axes. Li Kuei is this guy who would always run around in the buff and would kill lots of dudes with double axes. I mean, he was really ruthless, bad, but he was memorable and funny at the same time. It's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't read the book. So that's the reason for that. And guys like Flick, Flick is blue. The reason he's the blue lightning is because there's a character in the book named Yangji, and he is known as the blue-faced beast, so there's blue associated with him, so they made Flick wear blue. It's stuff like that, right? It's minor stuff, usually. However, there are characters who are quite questionable as to, like, Warren, for example, is a character who's exactly the same as his character in the novel. Like, they describe him as being a noble guy who runs a mansion where fugitives stay. In the book, there's a character named Chai Jin who runs a mansion where fugitives stay, who is a noble. It's exactly the same character. I was like, when I first heard Warren in this game, I was like, oh wow, Chai Jin. I knew who he was before I even looked at the Star of Destiny sheet because I'd read the book, and I was like, that guy sounds exactly like Chai Jin. However, there are a number of characters that are a lot different than their counterparts. And I'm going to go into some of those. So for example, Valeria is probably the most notable difference. In the book, there's probably about 12 characters who are really, really memorable, who people who finish the book remember. And it's much like that in Suikoden. You know, we have your hero, guys like Luke, Matteo, Gremio, Victor, Flick, etc. These are the characters who people who play Suikoden remember. Yet, one of them is a character named Wu Song in the book. And he's awesome because there's this part in the book where he's really drunk and he beats the crap out of a tiger with his bare hands. Like, he fights a tiger and kills it and punches it to death with his bare hands. Then he proceeds to, like, go to a town and meet his older brother who is promptly killed by his adulterous wife. And then he, like, disembowels and ritually murders this woman, and, like, it's crazy. You won't forget this character if you read the book, and what is what I'm trying to tell you. He's represented by Valeria in the book. Or, it's not the book, in Suikoden, which I find very interesting. I mean, she's not that memorable a character. She's fine, she's a strong character, but she's not that memorable, not like Wu Song. Another very common thing you'll see in this game and other games versus that sort of thing is there's a lot of characters who are at one point are Chinese imperial subjects, generals usually, who will eventually join the 108 Stars of Destiny due to shame or whatever. So characters like Kwanda, guys like Kasim, people like that are all represented here. Peshmerga, I don't know why Peshmerga is like that, but in fact that is the case. Milich, etc. So those were all characters who started out fighting against our heroes in the book and end up joining them. So there's a lot of little things like that. And it's pretty interesting, the little differences yet similarities you'll see. And like Taiho and Yamku, right? They're brothers in the game. Like, they're sworn brothers. It's this weird Asian thing. But in the book, they are like actually brothers. There's this guy named Zhang Sheng, and gosh, I forget the other guy's name, but they're basically like brothers, and Taiho's character in particular is one of the more memorable characters. Yet Taiho himself only memorable in the fact that he can be annoying to recruit, and you have to recruit him. So there's a lot of weird things like that in the game that I don't fully understand, but it's whatever. And obviously characters like Loikan are where they are because he's a doctor, and so in the book there's doctors, and like a lot of these characters, the Chi stars, I call them the Chi and the 10, right? So the difference is the Chi and the 10. So basically what this means is there's 36 of these and 72 of these, and the 36 are usually the more prominent members in the book, and they're usually significantly more memorable than the Chis. That's very true in both the game and the book. So, you know, but yet there's characters who are very memorable in the game, like Loikan is pretty memorable, Butch is pretty memorable, guys like, I don't know, not that many. Vicky is memorable, mostly because she's in a lot of the other games. Guys like Lorelei, stuff like that. So they have characters who are memorable in the Chief stars, which I don't think is really true in the book. So there's a lot of interesting differences. And this can be accounted for by the game's development. And I was reading about it, and I found it very interesting, and it explained a lot to me, because when I first heard about the game, obviously, it's called Suikoden, which is literally just the Japanese name for this book. It's no different, right? And then so they have the same concept of the 108 Stars of Destiny, and all these guys gathering against corruption, etc., etc. And that obviously is subverted in later games, but at least in the first game, that's the way it is. So it's interesting that they would make these changes, right? Like, why would, so Lin Chong is the character whose Kasim is sort of mirrored by. He's an extremely important and critical character in the book. Like, really, really important. He's one of the probably top 10, 12 guys, right, that everybody remembers who reads the book. Yet, Kasim is a late arrival. You get him late in the game. He's very different, in other words. Even though he's kind of the same, his function in the game is radically different than what... And, it explains a lot of, why LePont is the second star, right? Why is he... he's not that important a character. Matthew, for example, is a significantly more important character. Victor is a significantly more in character than LePont, but yet LePont is way higher in the list just because his character is almost identical to this one character in the book who becomes the second star. So it's just like that, right? And the reason for this stuff, these weird discrepancies, is the fact that originally, from what I understand, the developer of the game, the guy who created it and wrote the scenario and so forth, was actually basing his idea off of a manga. And the manga was one of these mangas which has a large ensemble cast of characters which is the kind of story I like. I'm a big fan of that stuff where there's not one or two main characters, where it's there's a lot of interesting characters, none of whom you might say are the main characters, something like Law and Order or whatever, or you have Lenny Briscoe and Jack McCoy, but you also have all these other dudes who are important. And so I like that kind of storytelling, and apparently this guy did too, because that was the game he wanted to make. But when he tried to pitch it to the head of game, I guess, scenarios at Konami, where he worked, he framed it in the manner of this old book that the guy would know. So he eventually pitched it as, hey, I'm gonna make this game based off the book, right? So that's why you get this odd little change here. You get some characters which are clearly based on characters in the book, like Warren, and then you get characters who are a lot different from their book counterparts, like Kasim or Fusulu, which is, I think, the biggest one. Obviously he looks a lot like the guy. He's not a tiger, but his role is non-existent in this game. He has no role at all. Whereas in the book, Li Kuei is all over the place. He is maybe the most commonly used character. So it's interesting that they do this, and I like it a lot because it kind of combines these two, more of a modern storytelling with this ancient storytelling. And of course, I personally think that this book is better than any manga or anime, but that's my subjective opinion, and obviously other people will disagree with me. So, but that's why one of the main reasons I enjoy this game so much is just because it's so different, in that way. I think it's cool. So anyway, enough about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I felt like we're at that stage of the game where now we have the entire thing finished and we have everybody running around and doing stuff. And of course, what's actually interesting is they do pick up a lot of characters like Marco and Georges, guys who don't have any real function in the story, because those characters actually are what are known as idlers, and so they provide weird, they're basically a lot of spies. They spy a lot on people. They do all sorts of cool stuff in the book. So they actually the weird mix of characters and stuff in this game is actually pretty accurate to the book, and I really like that. And like I said, starting in Suikoden 3 mostly, it becomes less, of course in Suikoden 2 even, because they start to get like animals and stuff, which is of course ridiculous to the book, because all the people in the book are people. But they have like, they start to get, in Suikoden 3 it's just completely different. Like there's almost no comparisons to the original characters whatsoever. It becomes much more like that manga, I would imagine. I've never read the manga and I'm not really sure what the manga is, but somebody might know that, but this is from what I understand. So anyway, the rest of this episode is going to just be cleanup. And what I mean by that is I'm going to just go ahead and give all the items that I've been storing in the Rocks Vault to their respective people. And we're going to just look at that stuff and decide, hey, like let's just see what they have to say. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get all the sound settings. And I believe, I have a bunch of these sound setting 3s because I fought a bunch of them and I got a lot of them. So there you go. So there we go. We got a lot of those. Now, I don't even know if I have enough room for this stuff, but yeah, I should. All the window settings. I'll just do 3 first, so that way I don't have to scroll down all the... Yeah, perfect. And also the pink paint. I'm going to come back to the old books. But for now, let's just go ahead and give these to the guys. The first guy we'll go to is this guy, Ivanov, and this should finish our mural. Yep, and we get this cool music. Just the heroic music we've heard before, but it's pretty cool. And now, he's excited. And we got the binoculars, which I can't make use of, but what they do is, if you have a second controller, you can use the second controller to manipulate the camera during battle and change the angle. So it's pretty cool, actually. I think it's an interesting feature. I don't know why they don't just let you do it with the right analog, or I guess they didn't have analog sticks, but I guess that's why they made it on the second controller. But anyway, I do not have a second controller, so that's, an issue. Let's go to the next place. Okay, I'm going the wrong way. What am I doing? In a derp. Pretty sure it's actually on the 3rd floor. Yeah. I was just touring you guys around a few episodes ago, yet I already was like, nope, you messed up. Actually, it's on the 4th floor, isn't it? 1st floor. Gosh, it's on one of these floors. This place is so big. It gets even worse in Suikoden 2. I actually don't like the fortress in Suikoden 2 very much. I think it's much more confusing. Like, this place at least is like, most of the stuff you need is in this really easily accessible area. You just use an elevator to get to it. I mean, you get one of those in Suikoden 2, but anyway. Yeah, so the guys that we were looking for are up with Milich and so forth. I might as well talk to these guys while I'm here. They're new. Let's talk to Sonia. You're beginning to resemble General Tio. Yeah, she's really obsessed with him. Commander Mama, you must remain on guard. Okay. For what? I don't know. Anyway. Melody! We will give you the sound settings. And now we have all of them. And we can use all of them. And I'll just go ahead and demonstrate all of them. This is the normal one we've been listening to the whole game. Every single time we do anything, it sounds like a weird sheep. I don't know. This is very weird. And it sounds like a cat and a bird. Okay. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this stuff. I just use the normal. But, hey, I mean, there's a little bit of customization for you. Let's do it. Alright. That's nice. So I should have given them all of those things. Indeed. And we can also talk to this guy. He's going to change the music. Thank you, Vincent. And this guy is so spacey that he forgot my name. And now that we have window, we can change the window We can make it look flowery, or we can make it look weird, or we can make it look, we can change it the way it looks, basically. It's not that complicated. I'm going to just keep it the same. I'm going to make it red because red is cool. So for the rest of the game, we're going to see red windows instead of blue because I always do that. Anytime I have the option, I always make things red. Red is my favorite color by a lot. So I think it looks nice. If you don't like it, well, you don't have to do it, but it's my game, so I'm doing it. Tough. And I'm pretty sure that that's about it. There are the old books, and I'm going to go ahead and do those next time because this episode is a little over 20 minutes long. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye here, and next time we will actually continue with the story as well as go over the old books. The old books will give us a lot of background on the characters and history of Suikoden 1, so I look forward to reading those with you, and I hope you look forward to seeing them. So I will see you guys next time.